Needs a lot of me, Lord.
All right, everyone. It is time to start the show. Good evening, everybody. I know we're going to continue to have people coming in for a bit, and that's fine. I just want you all to be aware that we are recording this. What we will do is have this posted on our YouTube page and also blast it out to our listserv and also put on our social media. We have been doing these type format programs for about a month and a half now, and we have had a lot of great feedback, especially from newcomers who are really wanting to learn about the candidates in this area. So my name is Kevin Creech. I am chair of Wake County Democratic Party. It is our pleasure this evening to host all of you. Tonight's program is all about protecting the governor's veto. So before we get started any further, I need to check in with my executive director, Mr. Sokolowski. Mr. Sokolowski, have all of our special guests been provided co-host status? And also, do we have an ETA for Senator Chowdhury?
To the first question, yes. To the second question, no, I've not heard from Senator Chowdhury.
Very well. I know everyone's bopping around this evening, and
Kevin, I sent you a direct message. He said he will be on within 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you so much. Anyway, everyone's having to work really hard, and candidates, I know you're exhausted, and we're getting ready to get right into the thick of it just in a couple of days. So I want you to enjoy yourselves this evening. We're going to go ahead and skip ahead to some stuff for just a minute so that we can give Senator Chowdhury a little bit of time to get in. Bless his heart, he's also running from place to place. So the first thing I want to do is a little bit of housekeeping. We will stay muted until we get into the breakout rooms. The first portion of this event is a forum. It's an open discussion because we really want our candidates to be able to discuss with one another what's going on. We get to eavesdrop. So that's what's going to happen there. Hopefully you will learn a lot. Then there will be breakout rooms during the last portion. There will be 2 breakout rooms. We will give you a chance to decide which one you want to go into. The purpose of that is so that you can talk directly with these candidates, have a more intimate setting, and we think that's important as well. That portion will not be filmed. We also have some special guests this evening. As you just heard, Senator Chowdhury is on his way to give a few words. I don't know if you've ever seen him when he's on the Senate floor doing his thing, but he is amazing. He is the guy that runs out and will take one for the team every time, and I appreciate it so much. We also have 2 guest moderators who came to hang out with us this evening. We have Ms. Jenna Wadsworth and Ms. Stormy Denise Fort, and I'm going to give you some information about these folks really quickly. We're excited to have them. Wake Dems has a slogan. It's called "Begin on the Back of the Ballot." And the reason we say that is because we understand that if you begin on the back of the ballot, you're definitely going to go to the top of the ballot. And the down ballot drop off is immense. And we have to defend and protect every single seat from the bottom to the top. So we have two of our down ballot, back of the ballot angels with us this evening who are going to be helping. Let me tell you a little bit about Ms. Jenna Wadsworth. She is a North Carolina native. She grew up on a working farm in Johnston County, and for nearly 12 years, she has served the residents of Wake County as the Soil and Water Conservation District Supervisor. This is a position she earned at the ripe old age of 21. She has ushered in many environmental programs and initiatives that have benefited this county, and she is seeking re-election this fall. Hi, Jenna. And next we have the Honorable Stormy Fort. She is a Raleigh native, a lawyer and a real estate agent. And she is also, and this is so cool, a certified rehabilitation counselor and a court mediator for district and superior courts. She was appointed to fill a vacancy for City Council District D, where she is currently serving. And now she is running for one of the two at-large seats this election. Hello, Stormy. So we're going to have a good time with them this evening. Next, let's talk about our featured candidates for the evening. We're going to start with the Senate. We have I call her Ms., but Senator Sydney Batch from District 17. Sydney is amazing. She practices family law. She's a child welfare law specialist, which is close to my heart, and a certified parenting coordinator. She's also a fierce advocate for women's rights, which is really important these days. She began her political career in House District 37, where someone else on this call is currently seeking a seat as a representative. And then she was appointed to fill the Senate 17 seat due to a vacancy. But since she got on there, she's done a few things, not the least of which is she's been the primary sponsor for 29 bills out of 64 bills that she has been involved with. So we're really excited to have her. She is seeking re-election. We need to make sure that she gets elected. Hello, Sydney. Awesome. Next, we're going to talk about Ms. Mary Wills Bode. It is Mary Wills Bode, and her cousin and I grew up together. So that's a weird thing. Mary Wills Bode is seeking a seat in District 18. She is from Raleigh, believe it or not, and she is now a resident in Granville County. And the thing about District 18, it was newly drawn, so it includes part of Wake County and goes all the way up through Granville County. She is somebody who is determined to protect women's full access to healthcare, supporting the public school system, expanding Medicaid, and lower healthcare costs for everybody. And she's really interested in investing in the local communities. We know that Granville is more rural, and some of the areas in Wake County that she is seeking to represent are more rural. She really wants to ensure that the infrastructure gets in there so that they have quality and equitable services. So welcome, 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 Mary Wills. It's good to see you. Side note, Mary has to leave early. Something unexpected came up. No worries. This is what happens in candidate life when we get this close to the election. So we'll give you a moment in just a moment. Next, we're going to talk about our House candidates. We have the Honorable Christine Kelly running in the aforementioned District 37. Here's the thing about Christine. She served on the Holly Springs Town Council for 4 years, and she was one of the first Democrats in a long, long time to do so. And that is a tough place to be. But she went and she did it. And then someone else, another Democrat, got elected to the town council. Now, it didn't work out for her mayoral contest this past municipal election, but that's okay because she's running in House 37. She is going to win. She is from a small town in Canada, but she has lived in Wake County for a very, very long time. She has raised her kids in the Holly Springs area, and she knows District 37 like the back of her hand. She too is very interested in supporting investing in that area with infrastructure, supporting our public schools, expanding Medicaid, and lowering prescription costs. And she's very interested also in protecting our environment. So hello, Christine. Very nice to see you. And is Representative John on at this point?
Madam Chair, I do not see him.
Okay, we will come back to him later. Is Senator Chaudhry on at this point?
Also no.
Okay, well, we're just going to move right along. This is what we're going to do. I'm going to ask a question. Since Mary Wills has to leave early, I was going to ask a particular question, but that can wait. I think I'm going to switch spots with Jenna Wadsworth, and I am going to go ahead and ask an open discussion question for all of the candidates who are here right now. Jenna, I'm going to do number 2, and you're going to do number 1. That sounded terrible, but you know what I meant. All right, here's the question for the 4 of you, or the 3 of you. It's about the imbalance in the NCGA. So the recent election cycles have yielded a majority of Republicans in the NCGA. I know all of you are shocked, but this is what I want to hear you all talk about. How has policy and lawmaking been impacted by this Republican control in the chamber? What has happened or not happened? How has this imbalance impacted our ability to get good policy and good lawmaking in North Carolina? I'm going to let Sydney Batch start the conversation because she's the OG in the NCGA, and you guys have about 5-8 minutes to have a good discussion.
Actually, Senator Chaudhry just changed to
showed
the
up.
waiting room. So do you, before I answer
saw
that, you wanna
that.
talk?
I don't know. You might need a minute. Let's see.
Looks like he's outside of another event because he runs around as much as I do.
He runs around. I'll tell you what, can we pause on that question?
Yeah, of course.
You are the best. All right.
No,
All right, Jay, you're up.
Jay, you're up.
how's my timing?
Perfect.
Impeccable.
Senator Marcus
Hi,
in
I'm here
Mecklenburg,
with
what's up?
Jay in Mecklenburg County. Thanks for sharing him with us.
All right, Senator. Tell our folks, because we do have new folks in here who are newer to North Carolina, tell them who you are, what you're running for, and then do the thing I wanted you to do with why we have to make sure everybody gets elected.
Yeah, so my apologies, Kevin, and everybody on the call. I had an event down here in Charlotte with Senator Batch will appreciate it. I think with the entire Mecklenburg delegation here from the Senate. And my name is Jay Chaudhry, and I represent Senate District 15, which will be downtown Raleigh, south of downtown Raleigh, and Cary. And I also serve as a Senate Democratic whip. I will just briefly, to Kevin's point, share with you all that my race is not as competitive as others races that we're contesting, especially Senator Batch and Mary Wills Bode, who's running in Northern Wake and Granville County. And what I like to remind folks, as we just did in Charlotte, is that the difference between Texas, Florida, and Georgia is 22 Senate Democrats. And so if you think about it, in Texas, women in our state don't have to travel hundreds of miles to seek healthcare needs or carry a pregnancy against their will. Unlike Georgia, the voters in this election cycle are not going to have to wait. Won't have to be in line where they're going to be prohibited from receiving food and water. And unlike Florida, our employers are not going to be penalized because they're requiring the vaccine for their employees. And so the difference between North Carolina, Texas, Florida, and Georgia is 22 Senate Democrats. And so I say that because with the election only 21 days away, it's critically important that we do everything we can to make sure we turn out the votes. Governor Cooper has vetoed 47 bills, and exactly 0 of those bills have been overridden. But these were bills that were passed by the Republican majority that included attacks on reproductive rights and voting rights. And I'll just conclude by saying this, that I know in many ways we're talking about preventing a supermajority, but it's important for us to think about this election in terms of not just 2022, but what we can do in winning the decade, because I truly believe that we can ultimately win back the General Assembly and restore a progressive North Carolina, because if we win the next decade, we can win the next half century for our children and our grandchildren. And I am sorry that it is so dark in here as I'm getting into my car.
Thank you so much, Senator Chaudhary. And we all understand we're right at the precipice of the beginning of actually like live in-person voting, and everyone's running around. So we appreciate your time. And I think it's important that number 47 bills have been vetoed. We have to keep that in mind as well. So with no further ado, sir, you are now off the hook. Please drive carefully on your way home, and we will check in tomorrow. All right, so back to the question at hand. We have our folks are here. And by the way, Representative John just texted me to let me know that he was having issues getting on his phone. So he is going to go home and he will be on this call in just a bit. All right.
And Kevin, I forwarded the email you sent to me to him because he said he was having trouble. So hopefully he has the link.
He's
Multitasking over here.
We'll get him in. I appreciate you. Sydney Batch. All right, so back to the question. The question was, and we're going to take about 4 or 5 minutes to talk about this, the imbalance in the NCGA during the recent election cycles. And I wanted you to share it with us and talk amongst each other. How has policy and lawmaking been impacted by this Republican control in the chamber? And broadly, how has it impacted North Carolina? So Ms. Sydney, if you could get us started on that one.
Yes, I think it's a tale of two cities. Prior to breaking the supermajority in 2018, we saw really horrible legislation that was passed by a supermajority that was run by the GOP in both chambers, in which the governor in his first 2 years vetoed numerous bills, over 24, I believe, and all of them were overridden, but a couple that the Republicans just didn't choose to try and bother with. And the reality of the situation is that we find ourselves really looking to either going back, and we are on the precipice, let me be very clear, 2 seats away in the Senate, 3 seats away in the House from having nice things in North Carolina, right? From being able to protect the fact that we are #1 in business. We were not #1 in business when the GOP prior to 2018 was in charge. Right, we were the laughingstock of the country. It was an embarrassment, and businesses left North Carolina. And in addition to that, we did not attract business during that period of time. The Republicans would like to tell you that it's because of their tax policy and all of the things that they have done to, of course, encourage all of these businesses to come to North Carolina. Reality is after 2018, when the governor and the House and Senate, with his support, went ahead and broke the supermajority, we were in a situation where we finally had teeth that he could veto legislation. And you heard what Jay said, which is 47 bills that he's been able to veto, and between the House and the Senate, not a single one of his vetoes has been overridden. And those are 47 terrible bills that, if they were in place right now, I would argue that we would not be #1 in business in this country, as we have been determined by CNBC and in several other news outlets. And the reason for that is because when we talk to businesses, they don't tell us that it's the tax policies that attract them to North Carolina. What they say is that we have an amazing community college system that is able to help train so many of their employees. And we also are what is the equivalent of a good Texas. We have all of the policies that are good about Texas and none of the social issues that plagues that state every single year, year after year after year, with regards to human rights, with regards to equality issues, with regards to access to voting, choice right now that we still have in North Carolina. And so when we're looking at what is to come versus what we've dealt with, we have seen what happens when we have a supermajority, right? We've also seen over the last 4 years what happens when you actually have a checks and balances in our government. And so we are going to return to some really dark times for a minimum of 2 years. And let me be clear, I say a minimum of 2 years because they have already made it clear in the Senate that they plan to redraw all of the maps. Leadership recently was in a conversation with one of my colleagues, my Democratic colleagues, in an event that said, he's also a redistricting chair. He said, oh yeah, we get these courts, y'all are gonna lose the Supreme Court. You're gonna be in a super minority. We're redrawing the maps and making it worse, and they'll stand for the next decade because we're gonna have a court that supports us and is going to allow partisan gerrymandering. We know that our Supreme Court right now is not in a position in which they obviously care about precedent. And we have a chief in Newby who specifically said, I do not care about prior law, right? I will change, or we will interpret it as we see fit. And so when you look at what they are playing for, especially in the Senate, because Representative John we can speak to the House, what you're going to see is legislation after legislation after legislation after legislation being passed that is going to restrict what our children could potentially learn in schools. It's going to change the way in which teachers are actually even going to be paid. You're going to have restrictions on voting rights and voting access. And at some point, I can tell you a really interesting story about the negotiations with Republicans that I was a part of and where they really are with regards to access to the ballot box, and so many other things. This isn't just about choice. This is about so many other issues that we have. And so I would frame the initial part of our conversation in that way.
Okay. Mary Wills Bode has to jump in about a minute. Mary Wills, you've watched this go down, and now you're running to be in it. So quick thoughts on that.
Yeah, look, I think that, I echo everything that Senator Batch said. We worked really hard in 2018 to break the supermajority. I think we can all agree that exactly what Senator Batch said. We're getting national recognition. We have so much growth. So many people want to come to North Carolina. And I think that is in large part because we have, sorry, my call that I was waiting on just came through, but in large part because we have been able to get back to a place of balance and accountability and compromise and debate. And we can't backslide any further in North Carolina. We have been gerrymandered, and we have to make sure that despite the scales being tipped not in our favor, we have to make sure that we are ready to fight back, and that we are ready to make sure that every vote in North Carolina can count. Some people's votes don't count more than others, because it's serious. And I am so grateful that in 2018 we did break the supermajority, and I jumped into this about this time last year because I didn't want to see North Carolina go back to that place. We have become a #1 state for business, but we're also a world-class destination for healthcare. We've got a great university system. We're a very diversified economy, and a great place to live. But it's because of visionary leadership that we've had over the course of many decades. And the past decade with the supermajority has just been, it's been devastating to many parts of our state. And I'm in my car right now because I don't have high-speed internet where I live. Right? Like, that should not happen in North Carolina. We're so much better than that. We have, it's just, it's things like that we need to get the right folks in there who want to work in good faith, and who want to get the job done, for North Carolinians, and our future.
All right. Well, we actually thank you for that. And so we haven't heard from Christine, but Christine, we have 1 minute. So what can you say in about 1 minute? And Mr. Sokolowski, if you could please send a text to Representative John. He needs a good phone number to call in. Thank you. So Christine, real quick thoughts, and then we will move on to our guest moderators. Thank you so much, Mary Wills. Good luck this evening.
Thank you. Take care.
So I am running for the first time for the state house, but I can say from a municipality, right? And from somebody who's working in a STEM company that's been, a great company that's in the area, I can see the impact of where we are going in the right path, and that we were attracting great businesses and can. From a municipal perspective, I felt the partnership, Senator Batch was great in helping us recruit wonderful companies, because we're looking at the balance of residential, commercial. But one of the things that we have to keep in mind is that companies are coming here because they recognize our value, but at the municipal level, we have to help them actually stay on the course in a more strategic way. So I look at what the bills that these guys have tried to pass, they're sitting in there in committee, they never get out. All the hard work's been done. What we need is the folks that we can be there to push them forward and flip flip the majority. So we know that. But I also know that when the question was, how are we impacted by those that are in power now? At a municipal level, as an example, we passed tree ordinances so we could save trees when new businesses come and not clear cut. Okay, because my region has tremendous growth. There was a bill that the legislature was coming in that they wanted to take that right away from municipalities because their lobbying is so strong. So what I see in Raleigh is a group of folks that have a lot of money coming from folks that are trying to put money in their pockets and not looking at everyone else. And that's where I see every Democrat that I know that's running is running for the right reason, to serve and make sure we lift everyone versus serving ourselves for putting money in our pockets and in our other friends' rich, deep pockets. So that's what I see. And that's what needs to change.
Thank
We can
you
do better.
very much. Thank you. Yeah, that's yeah, it does impact everywhere else. We take a really quick pause, and Representative John is getting all of his technology in order. I want to take just a moment, even though she's not a featured candidate this evening. I would like to recognize Representative Rosa Gill. And the thing I love about Rosa Gill is that she also served on our school board. And I know a lot of folks who are running in these tougher races are running because you also agree that we need to fully fund our school boards all over the place, or our school system. So thank you so much, Representative Gill, for hanging out with us. She hangs out with us a lot and we love her dearly. I see Joe John. Hi. We're glad you made it. Do you have audio? Let's see. We'll let him work on getting his audio together for a few minutes, and we'll go on and move on to the next. I'm going to ask one of our guest moderators, Ms. Jenna Wadsworth, if you would please present the next topic, which is actually the first topic. And I would like to remind our folks, please discuss amongst yourselves. This one is a learning topic. It's got two parts, something about your chamber and something about the differences in a majority and a supermajority. And we're going to take about 5 minutes total for this topic because topic 3 is going to take longer. So I'm turning it over to you, Jenna Wadsworth. The floor is yours.
Hey, y'all. So I think that over and over again, our party and people in our party, voters, what's driving them to the polls is they hear things like, oh, you know, we have to preserve democracy. We're doing this to preserve and fight for reproductive rights, for LGBTQ rights, for our environment, to support our public schools and our public school children, to help businesses grow strong and grow great here. But let's take a step back for a second and let's realize what it is that you all are fighting for and how you go about doing that work. We know that the North Carolina General Assembly is the legislative body of the state government of North Carolina. But in lay person's terms, and this is where our kind of multi-parter comes in, kind of discuss what it is exactly that the North Carolina General Assembly does and how does it connect with other governing bodies. I know that's something that the Honorable Christine Kelly kind of mentioned, coming from another governmental body. I know that Representative Joe John has been a judge. Like, let's just kind of connect those dots and talk about what it is that your chamber handles. And I know that Senator Batch did a great job of this earlier. Kind of explain how the difference in a majority versus a supermajority affects the work that you do in your particular chamber. So what is it? How do you connect to other units of government? What is it that you actually do in the General Assembly in your chamber? And explain how your chamber is particularly impacted by a majority versus a supermajority. Representative Joe John, you want to kick us off?
Representative John, can you hear us? Because we can see you.
Feel like we're back in that commercial. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Okay, he can't hear right now, so he's still working on it. So we're just going to go ahead and I'm going to ask you, Christine Kelly, even though you're not there yet, what is it exactly that the House does?
Well, one of the a lot. One of the major things I think that is important to our community is funding teachers and our funding our public education system, and working collaboratively with the county parties when they look at those individual school boards and making sure the teachers, the institutions, the facilities are well funded. And right now with the majority, we know that that's not happening, right? We know that we are in a state of dire state to make sure that we fund our schools. And there's a plan to do it. And the legislature has money sitting for a rainy day fund, and it's pouring on our schools. So that's kind of a big example of where the legislature impacts us all every day as citizens because of our schools. But speaking from like a municipality, you know, we work closely with a municipality with like the Wake County government, which took care of some of the facilities such as like waste and water, et cetera. And then the legislatures who we would go to for economic development or other things that could help our community as a whole grow in the right way. COVID was an excellent example of crisis that happened to our state, that the legislature was guiding us on what we can do, looking for ways to fund programs that we knew were much needed, because those are things that our municipality couldn't handle, that the legislature was trying to find ways to help our small businesses and help our institutions weather through that massive pandemic, and give us guidance along the way on how we could weather these unforeseen storms.
Well, I was going to say, I love that you brought up what we need to do, which is lead with Leandro and make sure that we're fully funding public education. And there is an opportunity inherent through the work and getting good Democrats elected and able to serve in our state legislature in order to do that and to prioritize the things that truly matter, I would argue, to almost every North Carolinian, to the actual voters in the state. I'm not sure if that's Joe John's phone number. Are you trying to is that, I don't know if you can hear us, maybe you could give us a nod. Senator Batch, you want to jump in the meantime, maybe additional information that you have about what it is that the Senate does and how a majority versus supermajority affects your chamber in particular?
We have about 1 minute left for this section.
Yeah, and I didn't know she was talking about the entire topic. I thought it was just my time. So I've already, I think, probably said all of the things that we need to say with regards to what a supermajority is going to look like versus, obviously us being able to sustain the governor's veto. I will just add that the House and the Senate couldn't be further than in both. It's the House tends to then also, unfortunately, because of the districts are bringing in a lot more conservative and more extreme members, including somebody who currently serves who was at the January 6th insurrection. And the Senate, because of course there are only 50 seats, you get less of the extreme types in the Senate. And so they always say the Senate is where good things go to die. I would say it's probably a backstop on some pretty terrible legislation that we sometimes see coming out of the House.
Thank you. Representative John, can you hear us now? Oh no. Is there any way that someone could give host privileges to that phone number? I'm not quite sure how to go about doing that. Maybe some of our amazing tech support could help us out here.
They have been asking him to unmute, so hopefully he could figure that out in a moment. We're glad he's here, and we'll get you in just a moment. All righty. We're going to move on to the next topic. I thank you so much, Jenna. I love how you just went in there and added all the extra context, and it's great. And Christine and Sydney, your answers were marvelous, and we need to hear about that. But we are now going to move on to our next guest moderator, Miss Stormy Fort, who is sitting on the Raleigh City Council and running for the at-large seat. Miss Fort is going to ask you question 3. And I really want you to have a good, robust conversation amongst yourselves, not just standalone, but like push back on each other. Let us hear what you're thinking, because it's really, really important that we do. And Representative John, when you're able to talk, just start talking. All right, Stormy, the floor is yours.
All right, thank you so much for having us this evening, and this is a great, robust conversation. And the question I have is, this cycle we are at risk of losing more Democratic seats and seeing a Republican supermajority. Why must we protect the governor's veto? But I'm going to add a little caveat onto that, which is, while you've been on the campaign trail or while you've been serving, what are some of the things that you've heard from your opponents that may be proposed legislation that they want to enact if they take over and get a supermajority? So what are some of the scary things that you've heard that we need to be aware of, in addition to why we need to protect the governor's veto? What are some of the things that are on the horizon? And Christine, we'll start with you while we wait for Joe John to come back on.
Well, I'm like, that list that you see out there, like all these bad things that can happen, teachers wanting teachers to have guns in their classrooms because they think we need more police in schools instead of healthcare workers to help our students, and recognize that our students are suffering somewhat because of COVID, but just the stress of social media that's causing them. Like, we have high suicide rates with kids that are teenagers that we didn't have before. So, the answer is not putting in more SROs and guns. It's just not. It's actually taking care of our school systems. Abortion rights are on the line. My opponent says that she is open to some sort of restriction sometime in the first trimester, but won't say when. As a candidate that's very much endorsed by the NC values type of group, I'm thinking that's day one. Here, our candidates have basically whitewashed their websites that used to have NRF and, pro-life plastered everywhere to try to make sure that they're moderate and say things like, I support schools, but really I support school choice, and I really don't want to fund public education. I support less gun regulations and maybe not even bother with background checks because we should have more guns, or we should, take away other rights that folks have. My opponent was, caused a teacher to resign because they were saying they're doing indoctrination in schools. And so they're leading with fear, right? They're leading with fear and mistruths about how we're going to destroy everything. And what you see in the news in terms of these candidates and how extreme they are, that's what I'm up against. And winning this seat would mean that we would have a chance to have one less person being extreme in the House, and one more person who would be supporting the good work that the Democrats want to do and support the governor.
All right. Some of that I had not heard before, so it's good that you were able to give us some of these examples. Senator Batch, what have you been hearing?
What I haven't been hearing is probably more scary than what I have been hearing. I mean, I've gone through it, and of course ran and lost against Ann Perret, who's running, that Christine's running against now. So we've heard all the same terrible things that they've said about me. So that's not new. What I'm actually concerned about is the fact that we as Democrats have been more apathetic in this election cycle than we are in 2020. That's my concern.
Yeah.
When we were in 2020 in COVID and we thought we were playing for a majority, everybody was excited because they want to be on the winning team. But no one apparently seems to be as concerned, or at least I won't say no one. You guys are all here, so you showed up. But there is a ridiculous amount of apathy within our party right now when we are on the precipice of losing our democracy. So when the stakes are at its highest, when we're going to return to a supermajority and wake up on November 9th, I will not hate that I have not given it everything, right? I've done everything I can, right? But other people are going to pay the natural consequence to sitting on the sidelines and thinking that the only thing they have to do with this for this election is to vote. Voting is not enough in this election. It's absolutely not enough. And I think that my fear for the state is that we're going to have to hit rock bottom for people to realize how bad it can get. Because many of the people in Wake County are new to Wake County, right? They're not like Christine, who have lived here for over 30 years. They weren't born here, like Mary Wills. And they don't know how bad it has been in North Carolina. 17,000 new people have moved into my Senate district since January of last year. the majority of them are moving from up north in the Midwest. They were not here during HB2. And I don't blame voters for being busy trying to put food on their tables for their kids and being in a position in which they are trying to manage all of these different things, including a lot of young families and parents. Who I hold accountable are those of us who have time, who have privilege, and are not using that for good, and are not knocking on doors and talking to voters where they are. And so my fear, and yes, the Republicans, they fearmonger all the time, but y'all, the reality is, like, we need to have a hope message, but you know why you go to work every day? To pay your mortgage so you aren't homeless, right? You fear being homeless. There has to be a healthy amount of fear. There needs to be a healthy amount of hope. And I just feel like Democrats are very complacent right now, not even being as fearful as they should about all of the things that are actually going to occur come November 9th, of which the Republicans have already told you what they're going to do. And apparently we don't believe them, or some of us don't care enough. So I know that's not a hopeful message, as Christine just gave you, but I do think that the reality of where we are is that when we have campuses on the weekends and we only have 3 weekends left and you only have 5 show up, right? That's where we are in this county. And so I'll stop with my soapbox and be.
No, preach on, my sister, preach on. I mean, because I've gone to a couple of those kickoffs. Kevin knows that, and you're right. I mean, it's a little heartbreaking and discouraging as a candidate when you show up and nobody's there to canvass. So we certainly got to get that message out. And I'll add. I don't know if Representative John can hear us. Okay, well. One of the things I'll say, in addition to everything y'all have alluded to, you also hear this stuff about, as it relates to democracy, ballots, them basically saying, we don't like the outcome of the election, so we're going to put some legislation in place that the General Assembly could change it. And with both of y'all being candidates, we've got a case in the United States Supreme Court that generated out of North Carolina as well, in terms of the impact of the outcomes of our elections. If we got a minute or two, maybe y'all could touch on that. And Senator Batch, we'll start with you since started with Christine or future.
Yeah, I'll just tell you guys briefly. I don't know how I became a part of this bipartisan effort, but Jay, myself, and one other member, Michael Garrett, out of Cumberland County, were the Democrats that were asked to go ahead and work with the Republican Senate chairs on legislation for an election integrity bill. We started off with saying that's not going to be the title because we don't have issues with regards to election integrity. The reason why Wade County doesn't get the results at all until like midnight is because they're driven to a building that doesn't have any outside access to the internet, right? Like, these are the things that we when I told him that they want a great idea, why don't you open every community college and every public university that we have in the state and make it an early voting site? And the Republican looked at me and said, Sydney, you've got to be kidding me. Those people are just going to vote for you all. Mm-hmm. And I said, well, I'm happy that you're acknowledging that apparently educated people vote for Democrats. But the reality of the situation is they know what they are doing. And if they get a supermajority, they are going to make it significantly more difficult for people to be able to vote. And none of us should be surprised by it. And he just happened to be comfortable enough in a room to slip up and tell me exactly what the plan is.
And we know they're purging people's names now because people are telling me. I had people come to vote last municipal election and they were taken off, and then on election day it's too late to do anything about it, right?
Because I hit the mute button. So
there's
Joe. Let me go back to
hey, Representative John, we can hear you.
Yes,
oh my
sir.
goodness.
We can hear you, sir.
Look, we're going to give you an opportunity to
talk. Been a long time coming.
Yeah, we're going to give you an opportunity to talk. So if you want to jump in on this question, what are some of the things that you're hearing that we need to be aware of in terms of what the other side is going to propose if they get a supermajority?
It is a frightening prospect. I have served in the General Assembly when there was a supermajority, my first term, And I can tell you that is, talk about frustrating. It's far more frustrating than not not being able to connect with you all this evening. You have it is basically they tell you like it or lump it, and that's the straight facts of it. So it is something we have to do everything we can to prevent. I did hear Sydney talk earlier about her concern about apathy. That is a concern. When I ran in 2016, I won by 384 votes. It's been better than that since, but every vote counts. That was a turnout election, and we worked very hard in our area and managed to turn out enough votes to squeak through. We all know about the North Carolina Supreme Court race, in which Sherry Beasley lost by roughly the same amount of votes that I won by. And I can tell you, as an attorney, a former judge and member of the General Assembly, that has had devastating effects on the operation of the courts. I'm terribly concerned about the politicization and the not only the politicalization but the partisan politicalization of our court system. If we lose our courts, we have nowhere else to turn, and that in and of itself is very frightening. One further thing, let me add. I'm trying to touch bases on everything I was able to hear a little bit about. One thing that I have heard in dealing with voters and being out knocking on doors and so forth is their fake campaigns, their false campaigns are having an effect. My opponent has totally reinvented herself. She was a rabid MAGA conservative the entire time she was in the North Carolina General Assembly, even before MAGA was MAGA. She is now the kindly grandmother who is a friend of veterans and is on the board at the children's home. You don't hear any of her support and sponsorship of bills like HB2 and preventing Medicaid, and her bill after bill after bill dealing with the women's reproductive health, Contra, you can be sure. So those are trying to touch all the questions I heard and wrap them all up into one. Those are my comments.
All right, Kevin, we're going to turn it back over to you because I think we got a little bit of time left for our breakout sessions.
Yes, I thank you so much, and I appreciate. Thank you so much for moderating and hanging out with us. And the answers have been great, and they're very thought-provoking. So yeah, we are going to go into a breakout session. That's not a breakout session. Frank and I have made the executive decision together, given some of the technical issues. We're going to have a breakout session here. Now I said earlier it wouldn't be recorded. It's going to be recorded. And again, we are going to share this out with our listserv, which is pretty large, and put it out for our folks to look at. But I want to say one thing. We brought up apathy, and that has been the experience. It is a midterm election. I've lived in North Carolina all my life. I remember break the majority, push in 2018. We had lost in 2016, and people were energized to go and do the thing. Biden won. We are all exhausted from this COVID pandemic. People are tired. I get it. I got it. And this is what a normal midterm, I'd say normal midterm turnout feels like. It's hard and it's sluggish and people don't want to do. And a lot of people are only energized if it has to do with the election for the president. But I want to echo what has been said tonight. Small d democracy is on the ballot, period. I'll say it again. Small d democracy is on the ballot. And if you're tired, I get it. You do need to dig deep, because what happens in this election will have huge consequences for what happens in 2024. And if you would like a peaceful transfer of power in 2024, you need to dig deep and get into this election. North Carolina is a swing state. It's one of the swingiest swing states in America. Wake County is the key county in all of North Carolina. If you are a North Carolina resident who is registered to vote in Wake County, you have more power than just about anyone else, anywhere else. And you need to get to that ballot box, and you need to vote for Democrats, and you need to start on the back of the ballot and vote the whole ballot. So I want to make that really clear. And bringing everyone down, now I'm going to bring everyone up a little bit. You can do it. So we're going to take some questions from the audience. What you are going to do, if you have a query, send it to chat. That's Brian Mathis. It's !chat. He's going to look through them, and then he's going to throw them out. And remember, we want all three of our candidates to be able to discuss this together. So Brian, are you ready to receive some queries or questions from folks?
Absolutely. Send them our way.
All right, send them Brian's way. One thing I do want to ask all of our folks here tonight, that when you get elected, what is one thing that you're either looking forward to or that you plan to prioritize immediately? What is one thing? And I want to start with Joe John. When you win this race, what is one thing that you're prioritizing or very excited to do? Make sure you unmute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, there you go.
Okay. All right. Sorry.
It's okay.
There are two things at the very top of the list. I will have to have some help in numbers to get them through because they've been my priorities since 2016. The first of all is to establish a totally independent, impartial, nonpartisan redistricting commission to draw legislative and congressional voting lines and districts in North Carolina. Secondly is to restore nonpartisan judicial elections in North Carolina. 3 years ago, we were the first state in the country to revert to partisan judicial elections after having nonpartisan judicial elections for approximately 20 years. So those are the top two. There are a number of others that are very critical. Medicaid expansion, doing something about common sense gun safety, and I could go on and on.
Thank you. All right. Christine Kelly, what are you either excited about or what is one thing you're going to prioritize when you win your race?
Anything I can do to help public education and how we can better serve the system and help our teachers and look for ways that we can better serve our students. So that is top priority and important to District 37 voters, which is I hear all the time.
Right.
Because of the rapid growth we had in our area as well, I'm also, I mean, all of the things that Joe John talked about, and like I said, I look through and see the legislature that people want to try to push through, that Democrats have tried and they're sitting there. You know, what are the things that could help the quality of life of folks? And there's a lot, but one is just looking to see, you know, like the minimum wage. Is there anything we can do to help raise the minimum wage so folks have a better chance of having thriving in where they are? So I'm interested in that. And then just as a whole, just the environmental issues, like I'm worried about, you know, our water and our air and, you know, there are legislation out there that was to try to address that. I mean, I'm worried about making sure that we fund the agencies that are supposed to make sure that we look at those things. Is our air really clean? Is our water really clean? Those kind of things. So I would be a newbie, so I would, you know, lean on my friends that know a lot more than I would, but there's a lot to be done.
All right. That's great. That's good. Oh, Sydney Batch.
Well, I'm laughing because, of course, my dear Joe John said, "Oh yes, let me tell you about legislation." I was thinking I'm going to reintroduce myself to my 9 and 11-year-old boys who have been very, very upset and sad that their mother, my 11-year-old, said, "Oh yeah, if mom loses, we'll see her a lot more." I was like, so don't let him go to the pool Greek for us. So I'm going to introduce myself to my children again. And I'm going to take a vacation because what you guys probably don't realize is that when you're in a very competitive election cycle, you don't get a vacation and you never take the summer off or any time off for that matter. with the legislation, we'll work on, I'll start part 2 of the child welfare legislation, omnibus legislation that I got passed last year. We will do another huge revamp of the system in order to improve outcomes for families in the child welfare system and children and their outcomes. And then I also will continue to push the rock up the hill to get paid leave for every North Carolinian, part-time and full-time in North Carolina. Only 12% of North Carolinians get paid leave. And that the Republicans to move on that.
My word. All right. So many things, including reintroducing yourself to your offspring. That sounds like fun. All right. Mr. Mathis, do we have any queries or topics that our audience wants these wonderful folks to address?
No questions for our current panelists at this time.
All right. Oh, hey, y'all. Look at that. They're like, thank goodness we're so tired. All right, so we do have just a couple of minutes left, and we are going to wrap this up pretty quickly. So I'm going to give each of you about 1 minute. Do your closing speech. Why should we vote for you? Why should we vote for Democrats? And again, folks, these folks are being featured because WCDP has a list of priorities. We have 5 electoral priorities. School board was one. Our NCGA protects and pickups. Those are the seats that are tough and the seats that we need to pick up. That was 2. Our judiciary from the district level to the Supreme Court, that is 3. Picking up CD 13, Congressional District 13 with Wiley Nickel, that was 4. And then getting Sherry Beasley into the US Senate, that is 5. Doesn't mean that the other races are not important. They are, but we needed to prioritize these 5 things. So the folks that you are seeing this evening have a tougher road to hoe than other NCGA candidates, which is why we are talking to them tonight. And these people are needed for us to protect the governor's veto. So with all of that, we're going to go in reverse order. We're going to go Sydney Batch, Christine Kelly, and Joe John. Each of you have about 1 minute. Do your stump speech, do what you need to do, leave us with something to think about, and give us a call to action. So Sydney Batch, you're on the spot.
So I will say that if you want to stop bad things from happening and have any chance of having good things continue to happen in the state of North Carolina, you need to vote for all of the Democrats from the local levels in our school board, all the way up to Sherry Beasley. And you cannot get tired in the ballot box and decide to just not vote, right? Your choice. You may not even like the Democrat that you have on your ballot, but that doesn't matter because they're better than the Republican that is on the other side, guaranteed. I would also say, if you don't have enough time to volunteer, I argue you don't have enough time to drive to Virginia in order to get reproductive health care, right? Think about that. If you don't have enough time to volunteer between now and November 9th, you're certainly not going to have enough time to actually vote on election day when they get rid of early voting to be able to take a day off because you don't get paid leave. And if you don't think that you have enough time to volunteer between now and then, you certainly aren't going to have the ability to go ahead and marry potentially your spouse if you're a same-sex couple in the state of North Carolina if the Supreme Court gets their way and starts rolling back all of our rights so that you got to go up north in order to have that right. Again, if you don't have enough time to volunteer or find someone else, if you aren't able to volunteer to do it, then none of us will have enough time to actually do the things that we need to make sure that we have the democracy that every single one of us deserves to have.
Well, all right. There she goes. All right, Christine Kelly, 1 minute.
So I'll tag team Sydney. So you're thinking, but why me? Like, I don't know how to canvass, or I've never phone bank and I just don't think I could do it. It's going to be really hard. Guess what? That's the best part of being a candidate right now, is actually talking to potential voters, because on the other side, when you're knocking on a door, they're like, thank God there are people out there that are saying that are trying to save our democracy. That's what you will get. So, you know, we need you to come out. We're going to train you. We'll make sure that we line you up with a job that suits you, but it is not as hard as you think. And we need you. I mean, this is Churchill's tale here. We need you. I mean, we're at that point. I mean, my race will be won or lost probably by a handful of votes. And I wake up every day going, The weight of democracy is on my shoulders, and I can't do it by myself. And this seat is so important, and they have more money, and they've been nasty as can be, and they've done 20 mailers. But you know what? When you're talking to folks at the doors, they see through that. They know that that's not real. So talking to people at the door is how we're going to win. That's it. It's not a mailer. It's not another ad. We have got to make that personal contact. So I know that folks are very chatty on social media. You got to come out and meet with us. And it is not as hard as you think. Please, please come out and help us win.
Thank you so much. I can tell you right now that several executive officers are on this call, and they are doing small claps, golf claps, because they're in agreement with you. And I can tell you that my executive director, Frank Sokolowski, is doing, look, he's clapping. Thank you for that, both of you. All right, Joe John, 1 minute. What's one thing left that you want to leave with our audience here, and then our audience who will be watching this over this next week?
First, a quick apology. The technical difficulties prevented me from being with you from the beginning. As one who has previously served at the highest levels of both the judicial and executive branches of government, and now having spent 6 years in the legislative branch, I'm perhaps uniquely qualified to speak on the importance and the significance of this year's election. It is not an exaggeration to say democracy in North Carolina, democracy in our country is on the ballot. Our North Carolina Supreme Court races are critically important. As I said earlier, if we lose the courts, if we lose impartial, independent courts, we are lost. There is no recourse. I'm ready, willing, and able to serve. I'm doing my darndest to get there to serve, and I sure would appreciate, as all these folks would appreciate, your help. We've tried to tell you how critical and important it is. This is indeed the most important election in our lifetime. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And he leaves us with a call to action, and we can do it. So I'm going to ask everybody here to visit wakedems.org election central. Our linkster, we'll put it in the chat for you. We have all the information you need to make a plan to vote, to find out where you're voting, to see what your ballot looks like, to learn about all of the candidates and all of the issues right there at that one spot. I also want to remind everyone that early voting begins on Thursday. It's this Thursday. We have been working hard to staff all of the early voting sites, except for Board of Election, which is a little difficult to staff, but all the other ones. We have huge gaps at Chavis and the Southeast Raleigh Y, which are, I kid you not, in the same precinct, and you can throw an apple and hit one from the other, but we need to get that staffed up, and that is CD 13, and please try to do that. We really, really need you. We'll put the links in the chat for you to sign up. Furthermore, early voting not just starts on Thursday, it goes all the way through November the 5th. This year, Election Day is the second Tuesday. It's on the 8th. We have 208 precincts, and we are planning to staff all 208. If you don't know what your precinct is, go to wakedems.org/election central, and you can find out what it is and see who is on your ballot. I would like to thank everyone for being here this evening. A special shout out to the volunteers in the background who are keeping things on track. Thank you to our featured candidates for coming and hanging out and having a conversation with us this evening. Thanks as well to our special moderators, my pals and yours, Jenna and Stormy, the Genster and the Stormster. Thank you so much for that. And also, wherever you are, Senator Chaudhry, probably driving your car back from Charlotte to Wake County. Thank you. Folks, reach out if you need anything. Take advantage of all of our resources. Get out there, get your vote on, and encourage your family and your friends to do the same. We have a big job. We can do it if we do it together. Good night.